Good morning. I'm Russ Moyer, and welcome to the Prophetic Edge. What an exciting time and moment that we are in. And today, we're going to take a little different direction with the Prophetic Edge, but it's still a prophetic perspective. But we're in the middle of a very intense moment in time, an intense season where the world is in the midst of chaos and anarchy, where we're under attack and under duress, both in the church, in the Western Hemisphere, in North America, in the Middle East, in Western Europe, in the Far East. I mean, there are things that are happening right now that are very important that we address. It's actually drawing me away from my typical Prophetic Edge discussions. And I'm going to talk to you about some current events today because I think they are very important to take a prophetic perspective and a now view in order to bring change. I'm going to share with you today a call to arms, a call to duty, a call to engage, and a call to action. I hope you're ready. I hope you've been listening to the heart of God and to the pulse and heartbeat of the nations in this moment in time so that you are ready to respond properly and that you are ready to take action. Because there's an urgency in the spirit. There's an urgency in the natural. There's an acceleration of things that are happening very quickly. So we're going to have to respond quickly. I address you today as leaders and emerging leaders in all different backgrounds and areas of life. You know, in my own life, I've had a lot of different seasons in different places where God has set me up and set me in place to have an influence and to get a perspective. And I'm going to try to share with you today from that broad view of who I am and the background that I have. Not just as a minister of the gospel, which I have been for the last 25 or more years, and but also from the fact that I was raised in America, in the cradle of liberty, in the suburban Philadelphia area, our first capital, and my loyalty and patriotism in America is still strong. My belief in faith in America is still strong. I want to come to you today, too, from the perspective of being a dual citizen, having lived more than 20 years in the nation of Canada, and I'm a dual citizen, U.S. and Canadian. I also want to come to you now as a person who has had a home and a ministry in Israel for 6 or 7 years. So I want to also bring that perspective of looking at things from there. Having grown up in poverty, I want you to know that I learned a lot in the midst of that in my childhood, in a nation that children today, in America, that they'll never know. Unless we, this generation, is willing to take a stand and turn this thing around now. Because we're running out of time. If we're going to make a difference, we have to rise up and make a difference right now. I was also an athlete, played ball, coached. So my athletic background and knowing that, America, a part of the entertainment industry with TV and multimedia and sports entertainment, coming at it from that perspective, because we are a nation that's certainly absorbed that way from the media aspect and certainly from a parental aspect. I love this country, and I take my responsibility as a citizen, as a man, as a parent seriously. So I'm going to address some serious issues today from a perspective that you may not be used to. But I want you to know that I believe it's important. I believe it's important because we are at a crisis point in America, and we must address change now. We must address issues, real issues, in real time, with an urgency of the moment, because there is a dramatic need for change, for complete change, for turnaround kind of change. And you know what? God can turn it around, and so can we. We need all Americans to engage in our system. Canadians, engage in your system. Understand your system. Sometimes, as I've been part of the Canadian community, I find that you know more about the American system than you know about your own system. If we are going to facilitate change, we're going to have to understand the system and the documents of government and how government actually works. We can't do it from a place of ignorance. Because of ignorance, the people are destroyed. If we are going to, the people are going to begin to take back the responsibility of self-government through the systems that were established, we're going to have to understand the system and the documents that are the foundations of what we're doing. I'm not calling you to a particular point, nor am I taking a conservative or a liberal look or a Republican or Democratic look. I'm looking at this from the perspective of an American who is concerned with our place now, as a Canadian, as a Canadian citizen who's concerned with the direction that our nation is going in, the choices and decisions that are being made now that are going to affect our children and our children's children. We can't just allow the politicians to take it. We need to take responsibility. Yes, we have freedom and liberty, but in order for us to maintain it, we are going to have to take the responsibility necessary as a citizen, as a person, as a man, as a woman, to stand up and rise up and to understand how the system works and to actually engage in the system so that we can facilitate positive change. In other words, we're going to have to be responsible. We're going to have to be involved because we need total restoration of the systems of government in the Western Hemisphere back to our original foundations, because we have gone off completely out of whack, out of order. We've wandered away from our traditions and culture and the things that made us great, and we need to turn back. We need to bring restoration. We need to be involved and responsible in order to bring restoration to both the American and Canadian system, to ensure that the American dream and that the dreams of freedom and free enterprise that made us two of the greatest nations in the world would continue to go on and leave a legacy for our children the way a legacy was left to us and to our generation. It's late. It's late in the game. This thing's a runaway train. But it's not too late to engage, restore, and to take positive action to bring forth change. It's not too late. It's late, but not too late. You know, I can't consider myself politically to have been a supporter of the Kennedy administration or John F. Kennedy, or his foreign policy, or his lifestyle. However, I totally agree with his perception and exhortation to all Americans. And I say this as well to Canadians. It's not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. That's a tremendous statement. Has nothing to do with political affiliation. It has to do with personal responsibility for us, our families, and our nations. And how we prioritize things to continue to maintain the legacy, the great legacy that our forefathers fought for and died for. We must deal right now with the unreal yet existing conditions on our college campuses. This is totally unacceptable. the anti-Semitism and open rallies that involve hate speech and violence must be stopped. The educational system has gone awry. We need to totally reevaluate our entire educational system in America and Canada and investigate and reevaluate the present curriculum that's being used and taught at every level of the educational system. We, as parents and citizens, must be involved in the educational system and not just leave it to educators because they are representing us. We are paying them for the most part, especially for public education, but also for private education at the university levels. And we need to take the necessary steps to bring proper reform to the system because it's totally out of whack. The present status and performance of our system of education and what we are actually producing as graduates and citizens is unacceptable. We are falling behind drastically, declining in the fundamental subjects of math and English. According to standardized testing, we are down in just about every single area. We seem to be focusing on trying to raise children and to bring political and conceptual ideas to children in education that are meant to be honed in our homes, in our society, not in education. We need to educate our children properly. We need to get back to the foundations of education. And in order for education to be successful, there has to be structure and discipline. And right now, that's radically missing. We are also not teaching some very important subjects so that we are graduating young people from the educational system who are not prepared to function in a practical and productive way in society. We have to begin to gear education toward things that are important, that training people for jobs that are real, that are necessary. Begin to emphasize trades being taught, electrical and plumbing, and the things that are necessary for building, constructing, and that are going to practically prepare them for jobs that are available that we are actually right now having to outsource and bring people in to do because we're not preparing them. We don't want to end up a system that is typically and that all of our children are only engaged on computers. We need builders, we need workers, we need people who are everyday people who are making a place and a difference in our society. It's important because even areas and subjects like civics, they need to be addressed at every level. It's eroded in America, and it erodes at the future Americans' ability to understand the process of self-government, as well as even the fundamental understandings of our freedom, our rights, and our responsibilities. It's important that we understand how to govern ourselves. And what has happened now, we're no longer teaching that in school. And that ignorance has allowed the political society to overtake us and rule us rather than government by the people and for the people. We have to get back to a total understanding of our documents, our foundation, the truth that our forefathers established for us as a nation. Our Judeo-Christian values need to be restored into our society, but a knowledge of how our system works is ever so important, because with a lack of knowledge, the people are destroyed. They're overcome. So we have to get back to understanding who we are, what we're called to do, what is our responsibility, what are my rights, what are my freedoms, but more importantly, what's my responsibility to my nation and to the political system that governs our nation. We as Americans must take back ownership through a direct involvement at every level, asserting our values and foundational purposes. We need to Americanize our system again, because there's been an influx into the American system of government, some through immigration, some through education, some through plotting, some through political action, that trying to turn us in to a socialistic governmental society, and it was never the purpose for America. It's not the American way. It's not the American dream. We as Americans must insist on a comprehensive immigration policy, and we must enforce it. That includes vetting, policing, and enforcing for the welfare of our citizens first, before our visitors and guests and our immigrants. American citizens are who the politicians represent first and foremost. And our safety and security has to be their number one concern. Immigrants are, by and large, fleeing from countries that oppress their liberty. Yet we are allowing them to bring their horrendous conditions, political perspectives, and values into our system, which is watering down our freedom, our free enterprise system, our financial systems, our educational systems, our traditions, cultures, and values. They fled from that because it wasn't working. Let's not allow them to alter our system, which has worked. The greatest system of government in the history of mankind, representing freedom around the world. Yes, we've made a lot of mistakes, a lot of errors. Everybody does. But let's celebrate and let's learn from the past. Let's not destroy our history as though it never happened, but to learn from our history and grow and improve. Politically, we must stop the two-tier system in America that in any way allows the politicians to live under a different or special condition or benefit than the people they govern and represent. We the people. We must fight for term limits at every level and reasonable retirement ages. Now, I am part of the gray-silver generation. I'm not saying they have to retire from life, but we need to continue the term limits and retirement portions so that we can get a fine perspective of what this next generation and the merging of the generations together, so that an older generation is not the one that's leading the younger generation and dominating them, but that we are actually capitalizing on the power, the energy, the authority of the generation, as well as the wisdom from the previous generation. And term limits are important so we can begin to engage as many ideas and backgrounds as possible. We must redirect the efforts of the FBI, CIA, and IRS from oppressing the general population and giving special consideration and privileges to government officials. We must insist on eliminating the lobby system. You say, well, what do you mean? What do I mean? I mean, we have established political lobbies, which is actually the legalization of graft and influence peddling. It breeds legalized corruption in our nation. We point the finger at and speak about corruption in other countries. and graft and things that are happening and have people buy influence. Well, here we've legalized the plan to buy influence. You can influence your politicians through political action groups, and that needs to stop. We need to stop allowing money to run the system. And big money, and corporate money. We have to turn the government back to the people where it belongs. We must develop a sincere effort to support the principles and precepts of the Constitution of the United States, to go back to its original intent that our forefathers had, to centralize federal government, to do away with the centralization of federal government, and to restore the power back to the states, local governments, and local school boards, which are actually the true pillar of our republic. We need to be able to govern at the grassroots level, so that we can govern ourselves and educate our own children and not centralize and federalize everything and try to rubber stamp every society and every community and every family and every life. We have to get back to real freedom. We must support and honor our local police authorities. There's been this breakdown in support, and we know, every one of us know, that in this moment in time, one of the most important issues is law and order. If you are running for government today, make your stance known on law and order. And it must include honor and support financially, politically, of police, fire department, first responders, as well as our armed forces, our military force. We must insist on local police support to restore law and order to our streets, cities, and our nation. That has nothing to do with race. I will tell you, I know so many wonderful people in every one of our communities and people groups in this country, and they are all concerned with law and order. They all feel insecure in this moment because the authority has been taken away. And it's not only at the police, fire, local level, it's also at the military level and the federal level. But it includes problems with the judicial system. We must insist on reform in the judicial system at the local level so that the laws are not only enforced, but proper punishment that includes reform and restoration of the individual, but it also keeps our society safe from people who are causing major issues of violence and murder and death on our streets. And we have to take a hold of the moment. The penal system must be reformed. And they must set serious guidelines with certain mandatory sentences for violent crimes. Violations and civil disorder to protect law-abiding citizens. The safety and freedom and well-being of our nation are the first and foremost priority of every politician at every level of government. We need to totally reevaluate our mental health care system to bring a balance that protects and treats those in need, as well as protects our general population and society from violent mental illness, criminals, and crimes. We must come up with a comprehensive system that deals with the homeless situation that ties in almost directly with the mental illness issues that people are being faced with that end up causing them to fall through and slip through the cracks of our society and having their issues undealt with. We need to empower and support faith-based and grassroots organizations that are producing positive results dealing with these issues, and also to involve coalitions between government, grassroots, law enforcement, local government, faith-based organizations that are actually having an impact in our cities, that are producing real results, that are actually fighting drug abuse, and also combating things like the mental health effects that occur within a family that's been totally abused and taken apart by drug abuse. Not just the person who's the addict, but there are many families that have been totally taken apart and victimized. They need healing. They need help. They need us to step up. We can't just put all that on the government. We have to develop that volunteerism within ourselves to meet the needs. And as the church, we must rise up and do our part. And as the government, we must accept the church as a viable part producing positive results and treat them equally, not unequally, so that we can base our funding on results, because we need to be results oriented. We need programs that actually work, that change and transform lives, that produce and restore citizenship and involvement, bring people back into our society. How do we take a first step, a first positive step for change? I say to you, engage. Engage at every level. Engage yourself. Address yourself. Speak to yourself. Challenge yourself to arise and participate. To answer the call as a citizen, to do your duty, to engage. Hey, we're not talking about that you're being drafted into the military for 2 years, compulsively. But as a citizen, you have a responsibility to engage in the system for the betterment of our society. Each one of us have an individual responsibility that goes along with our Bill of Rights and our freedoms. It's a call to engage. It's a call to action. It's a call that's going to require your time, your energy, your effort, your talent, your ability. It's going to require you to challenge yourself, not just to end your day after your 8-hour shift of work, but then to invest something into your nation, into your community, every day, every week, as well as into your local family. How do I take this positive step to bring change? Register to vote. Engage. Know your representatives and notify them. Email them, phone them, send them letters with your desires, with your perspectives, with your thoughts, with your inundate them with your input. Be a voice, first and foremost. Be a voice of change. Be a voice of stability. Be the voice that you're called to be today. If you're a believer, you're a voice of Christ in the earth. Allow that vote, allow that participation to come forth. Engage in the educational system. Begin to attend school board meetings. Find out what the curriculum is that your children are going through. Hey, be involved in the parental education in supporting the system or changing it. The only way you can do that is to be informed. Find out what they're being taught at whatever level of school. Make your desires and your wishes known to the school boards that represent you. And demand change. We, as the moral majority, must be loud and clear with a message of foundational truths, freedoms, our perspective, our values, our core values as Americans. We need to go back to the foundational truths that are in our heart. And we need to stand up. Don't put it on someone else. Don't put it on government workers. Don't put it on politicians. Don't put it on the system unless you're doing your part in the system. We have no right to complain if we choose not to participate. So I want to challenge you to take that first step of awareness, willingness to change, engage, register to vote, make your voice known, be part of the solution, or you're part of the problem. The only thing that has to happen for evil to prevail is for good men to remain silent. Now, I'm going to address a few more things of this nature and what is going on in our country right now. And I'm doing it from a perspective, a prophetic perspective, but also a perspective of having had some wisdom in different areas of environment. I'm in my 75th year. I've seen a lot of presidents and administrations and local governmental things. I've been involved in some of them over the years, as many of you know, during the time that I was in business and the political action and involvement that I had. So I want to look at that from that perspective, and I know that it takes time. And I know that you're pressured for time in our society today. But you have to make time for what's important to you, for what's important to your future of your children. You have to engage. You have to disengage from some of the entertainment situations that have taken a demand on our time. Recreation is wonderful, but we have responsibilities that need to be taken care of. That each one of us, no matter what level of engagement or involvement of society that we may be in, no matter what our background, traditions, and cultures, every voice needs to be heard. That's what democracy is. And as a republic, which we are, our representatives need to know what we're saying so that we are engaged in government by the people and for the people. We have to motivate and inform our government officials that we've elected and demand that they begin to appropriately react to the will of the people. There is a total unrealistic and disconnected mindset in the political system today. They have lost touch with the people they represent. But I'm not so sure I can put the blame all on them. Maybe we've walked away from that relationship. If you're not engaged in the system, that's your fault, because you have the right, and so do I, as well as the responsibility as an American, as a Christian, as a believer. You don't only have rights and liberty and freedom, but we have responsibilities. And I want to exhort you today to engage, to be a part of the solution and not the problem. If you need information or you'd like to comment, please feel free to do so. By the way, I don't engage in surface arguments and irrelevant things. If I did, and that's why you don't hear me do this often, because I don't have time to mess around with this, because I'm active in doing some other things. This is not to create political debate. This is to charge you to take political action and to take responsibility of your citizenship. I don't want to engage you in the different problems and debate that. We spend plenty of time in that debate. I want to engage you in the system so that you'll bring your ideas, your thoughts, your feelings, so that we won't be influenced by just this narrow view that we are seeing today, because the broad view of Americans and Canadians are not participating in the system. So a few are taking up all the oxygen in the air, and they are running the program, the media, the government, and us, mainly by default. So I want you to know that I love you and I appreciate you. And there is something else I want to share. This is a really important time right now. We are headed toward, I believe, a season that's going to get economically worse, both in America and Canada. We are in a downturn, and it's going to continue to be that way. Maybe not at every local level, but in many areas of our society. It's important for you right now to stabilize yourself economically, to cut your debt wherever possible, to remain solvent and to remain to remain fluid with your assets, so that you're prepared for the season that lies ahead. There's going to be turmoil that comes. Things are going to get worse before they get better. You need to get stabilized in your core roots, values, participation, not only in government, but in local church. You need to come back to church and come back to your roots. So it's a very, very important moment for every one of us. You have to know that the real estate in most arenas is already leveled, but in many places, you're going to see a rapid fall and drop in values. And the dollar and the Canadian dollar are both under attack right now, from the outside and the inside, economic. You need to have an awareness that we are at war, and how to prepare yourself for war, how to set yourself for war, with a war economy, with a war mindset, because there's a war going on all over the earth. Prepare yourself. I pray for you right now. Father, I pray right now for everyone that hears this message, that they would answer the call to arms, the call to duty. That they would handle their personal responsibilities, that they would engage and take action. Father, that you would give us wisdom and understanding. And Father, that you would raise up leaders within the body of Christ who will take their rightful place and lead in the midst of chaos and at the speed of change. That they would be the head and not the tail. I speak to this prophetic generation of the sons of Issachar, who knew what it was that Israel and the church and their nation needed, was supposed to do. And they became leaders. I speak to the leaders now, and emerging leaders now. Receive a fresh anointing. Receive fresh information, insight, creativity, energy and strength to engage, wisdom and discernment that can break the barriers of deception. Let the truth prevail in your hearts, and arise and stand for the truth, for it's your hour to shine. I bless you. I bless you physically, spiritually, emotionally, financially. I bless everyone hearing this message with everything that's required for us to take our stand and turn this thing around. This is the moment in time. I bless you in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.